So welcome to the digital info session for CS50x Miami. I'm coming to you from the very classroom where we actually teach the class at the Idea Center at Miami-Dade College. During the next few minutes, you'll learn a little bit about the course, about the instructor for the course, the material that we teach, and the registration process so you can get started learning about programming and computer science. Now, CS50 is a course which is taught at Harvard. It's called the Introduction to the Intellectual Enterprises of Computer Science and the Art of Programming. Now, the course that we offer, CS50x Miami, is our own adaptation of this course. So it's kind of like you get to take a Harvard course here without having to go up to the cold north Boston area. You can stay here in sunny Florida. Now, this course has been taught for many years at Harvard, and the most current iteration of the course is developed and taught by Professor David Malin. So you probably don't recognize this face yet, but throughout the course you'll become very familiar with David and the rest of the teaching fellows that work up at Harvard developing the course and the course materials. Now, our own course here at the Idea Center, the adaptation of this course, there we go, is taught by myself, Ken Loomis. Now, we've taken the course, adapted it for more of the South Florida marketplace. So we do things a little bit differently than they do up at Harvard. But kind of in a similar vein, we do have our own teaching fellows who will be here to lead our hands-on sections, while the lectures will be mostly taught by myself. Now, what is it that we actually do in this class? Well, our goals are to teach you a bit about programming. So we teach you how to program in a language called C, which is kind of a lower level programming language, a language that isn't used quite as common anymore except in different operating systems. But by looking at this somewhat lower level language, when we move to more modern high level languages, you're able to take those same ideas and very quickly pick up on that language. We'll also be taking some ideas that we learn in C and develop them for different computing disciplines, whether it be cryptography, graphics, or web development. We'll look at a number of different areas of computer science. We'll also be looking at problem solving. So I know you probably have taken many mathematics courses where you've had to deal with those dreaded word problems. We'll be looking at word problems an awful lot in this class. But we'll be developing our own algorithmic way of thinking to solve those problems, to analyze the problems and figure out a solution that works for that specific situation. So our goal is not necessarily to teach you how to solve a specific problem, but how to break down a problem and solve it without looking at specific solutions. We'll again be looking at a number of different computer science disciplines to help us with our problem-solving skills. But probably the most important factor of this course is to have a little bit of fun. We don't try to teach this course as a typical college computer science class. In the lectures, I tend to bring students out of the crowd and have them join me up on stage so we can act out different algorithms or maybe just pretend to be different parts of a computer working together to solve a problem. So we try to have a little bit of fun in the class. That way you start to meet your fellow students, you start to work with your fellow students, and possibly maybe find a future development partner in the class. Now, we are going to look at a number of different languages. So in a typical programming sequence, you might spend 2 or 3 courses talking about a single language. In this class, we're going to talk about a lot of different languages, but we won't go very deep into each one. So we'll start off learning a language called C, which I mentioned earlier. Now C is a low-level language, so it doesn't have a lot of built-in tools to the language. So you basically have to do everything yourself from scratch every single time you're writing a program. That's going to help us to develop some skills you'll need later on in the course. We'll also look at HTML and CSS when we start talking about front-end web development. Now this course isn't specifically focused on front-end web development, but we will do a little bit. We'll talk a little bit about these languages. So if there's one thing that you want to study ahead of time, I would recommend looking at HTML and CSS to get a feel for front-end development. A little bit later on in the course, we'll switch over to using Python as our teaching language. Now Python has a number of different applications. It can be used for artificial intelligence, for machine learning, for visualization tools, and mostly we'll be using it for back-end web development. So we'll be using Python to write a web server. Now this web server is going to use a library called Flask to help ease the work a little bit, and a templating language called Jinja. So we'll be essentially developing a back-end server which is going to allow us to create HTML and CSS code kind of on the fly. Now we won't say that you're going to be a full-stack engineer at the end of the class, but you will have an understanding of the full-stack development process. We'll also be looking at SQL, which is our language that allows us to interact with database systems. And while we'll be using SQLite as our database system, you can apply your knowledge of SQL to pretty much any other database system. We'll also be looking at JavaScript, which allows us to do a little bit more front-end development in web design. But we'll be using a template or using a library called jQuery to help us speed up the process, and using a system called Ajax to allow our front-end web pages to interact with our back-end web server. So we'll be looking at quite a bit of computer science across a number of different disciplines throughout this class. Now again, I mentioned we won't go very deep into each one of these, but you'll get a flavor for each one of these languages as we progress throughout the class. Now, what is your real contribution to the class? Well, this is a lengthy class. It is a 20-week program, and it's very intense. We're kind of covering, again, several different computer science disciplines in one class, so you really need about a 20-hour week commitment to the class. Now that means we'll be spending a lot of time in the classroom, but also outside the classroom, doing some research, writing some code, working on projects. Now there are 2 lectures each week. We meet every Tuesday and Thursday from 6:30 to 9:15. Plus, you'll also be required to attend one hands-on section, which is led by one of our teaching fellows. Now, our time periods for those are going to vary. So there'll be a set schedule each week. You can pick one that's going to meet with your schedule and just consistently go to that section each week. Now, in addition, we also do offer coding hours, which are time periods when you can meet up with fellow students, meet with some of our teaching fellows and volunteers to do your assignments, work on your projects, and still have someone there that you can ask questions to right away. There's nothing worse than being at home, trying to solve something on your own, and not having anyone else to talk to. So while we do offer an online system of communication, we also want to offer some time that you can meet with your other students in the classroom too. So we do have those coding hours, which are optional. They're not a required portion of the class. Now, I know this is a little early to start talking about registration. You're still trying to decide if CS50x Miami is right for you, but the registration process is a little lengthy. It takes about at least a week to go from applying from the first part to actually registering. So even if you're just thinking about registering, I recommend starting the process as soon as possible. We tend to get about 5 students interested for every seat that we have in the class. So you're really kind of fighting for one seat in the class. So register early. You can start the registration process by filling out our information request form by going to apply.cs50xmiami.com. Now there is links to this form on the Idea Center's website and CS50x Miami's website. So you might also get to that around kind of a roundabout way. Once you have completed that form, you should receive from us a link via email that has a username and password attached to it that allows you to take the application quiz. Now the quiz itself doesn't involve any programming, just some problem solving. So we want to test your problem solving abilities before you start the class. That doesn't really become necessarily a barrier to you getting into the class, but it creates for us our waiting list. Those that score highest have the first available seats in the class. After you have completed that quiz, you'll hopefully get an invitation to register from us. Now, if you have taken an Idea Center technology course in the past, you can skip taking the quiz because we know that you already have the prerequisite problem-solving skills that you will need in the class. So just let us know if you are a former Idea Center technology student. Now, CS50x Miami is a challenging course. And I always want to tell students that you shouldn't compare yourself to the other students in the class. There's a wide variety of students that enter CS50x Miami. Students that have no programming experience whatsoever may still take the class, or students that are actually computer science students who may have taken computer science or programming courses already. So we have a wide variety of students. That means we have some problems which are designed for entry-level students, and some problems which are designed for students that have a little bit more familiarity with the class and with the material. So don't compare yourself to your neighbor sitting next to you in the class. Instead, compare yourself to how you started the class and how you felt going into the class. The information that you knew at the start of CS50, compare that to what you have at the end of the class. And hopefully you'll find that you learned quite a bit throughout the course. Now I've provided here on the slide, but I will also provide these in the links down at the bottom of the screen on YouTube on how to find out more information about CS50. So you can visit the Idea Center's website at the top link, or go directly to the cs50xmiami.com website. Both of these places will have similar information. However, if you want to take a look at the syllabus, you'll probably want to go to the second link. If you have questions about the class, just want to find out more, or have questions about the registration process, just email us at apply@cs50xmiami.com and we'll handle those requests for information. So I hope this was a little bit informative without being overwhelming, and we look forward to seeing you in Cohort 8 of CS50x Miami.